Today we're going to talk about Phyllis Wheatley. She was a poet who was born in Gambia, Africa in 1753. Now she was sold to slave traders in 1761 and brought to America. Now her name Phyllis was derived from the slave ship that brought her over here. It was called the Phyllis. Now she was sold to a family that lived in Boston, Massachusetts, and that family, they took, pretty good care of her. They educated her, they encouraged her to read, and Phyllis Wheatley began to write poetry at the age of 14. She published her first poem in 1767. Phyllis Wheatley became famous in 1770 with the publication of a poem called an elegiac, wow, that's hard to say, an elegiac poem on the death of the divine George Whitefield. In 1773, Phyllis Wheatley traveled to London, and there, with the help and funding of an Englishwoman, she actually published her very first book of poetry. The name of her book was called Poems on Various Subjects, Religious and Morals, and it was the very first book ever written by a Black woman in America. Soon after that, she became emancipated. And inside of her book, was even a picture of her, really to prove that a Black woman really wrote the book. Her poetry was influenced by her African background, by slavery and things that were happening in her time and day, by the poetry she studied. So her works really were influenced by all the things that she became involved in. She wrote letters and poems about slavery and enslaved people and how that wasn't such a good thing, and about how it really was a bad thing, and that without people being free, that the colonial war would never be great. Now, she did decide to get married, and later on, she did that in the year of 1778. She got married to a man who was a free man in Boston, and they had 3 children, but unfortunately, none of them survived. She did try to write a second volume of poetry, but it failed, and she actually lived out her days working as a washwoman to support her family, and she died in December of 1784 due to complications from childbirth. But the thing is, her work and her poetry really was a testimony to the fact that if we, Black people of color, got an education and were exposed to things in the world, we actually could make contributions to society. So her work was very important in that respect. So for that, and being the first African American to ever write a book in America, I salute you, Phyllis Wheatley, on this day in Black history.